Hi there, sitting in the Chevette right now, just getting ready to start ripping the engine out, tearing it down, getting a look at it. Before I do that, I figured I'd go over this Sinco Tech digital dash unit one more time. The original video I put, couldn't see a lot of that stuff very clear, so I thought I'd just go over some of the functions of the unit before I end up ripping everything out and it's kind of not functional. I got to use the unit basically for one race weekend. It was a big race weekend, and it performed really well. I really like it. It's a big step up from the 908, the previous one that I had in here. Much easier to read under racing conditions, looks way cooler installed, the whole works. It's just an upgrade, 100%. Worked pretty much flawlessly over the course of the weekend, did everything I needed to do. The biggest thing I liked about it is I don't pay a lot of attention to the gauges while I'm racing. The lights for the tack worked really well. I know where I set my values, so it was no thinking. I could just see the colored lights and I knew exactly where I was and if it was where I wanted to be and whatnot. I didn't have to worry about any alarms. Fortunately, the car held together. The oil pressure gauge continued to go down, and I could see in correlation to my oil temperature raising, my oil pressure dropping, and that's just due to the engine kind of wearing itself out. At that point, it's seen quite a bit of use. So it did do what it needed to do. It didn't get to the point where it was low enough to set any alarms, but it was easy enough for me to follow along and not take focus off of the track to see what it was doing. So that was the biggest thing I took away for it. And it looked super cool all hours of the day, whether the light was shining on it, whether it was dark. It was just super easy to read, super clear. Really, really cool unit. This is kind of what you can do with the unit. I'll walk you guys through the just through the setup and the options that you can do with it to set it up the way you like to do it. So this is the unit mounted in the car as it turns itself on. So this is generally the screen that I was using. It's got a small tack, oil pressure, water temp, voltage, oil temp, and your AFR. If we go home, that's your home screen. It's pretty sharp. Like I do enjoy it. It's pretty sharp. But it gives you your different options, right? So that's your gauge settings. This will record your telemetry, max RPMs, max speeds, all that stuff. Again, to this point, still haven't played with it. And then you got your graph. This will tell you your speed. It's basically got speed, tack, boost, and then your G-forces and kind of how everything's working in conjunction with each other. Again, never played with that. You got your record. You have to have a computer hooked up to it. And then in your settings, just because we can, and it's kind of annoying right now, I'm gonna shut this oil pressure alarm off. Oil pressure off. And then we've got our settings. So I haven't had the battery hooked up, so you set your time and date, all that stuff. You can choose your units, right? You got your language settings, you got your unit settings. Everything's there for your preference, right? We're in Canada and we kind of use a mix of everything as car guys. Still seem to read our temperatures in Fahrenheit and our speed in kilometers per hour and our pressures in PSI. It's pretty backwards. Now you've got your dimmer settings, day and night dimmer settings. They work pretty well. I leave it cranked. It's not too abrasive in the dark because generally you don't have just this pure white screen while you're driving. So the tack is kind of set. I got it set right now as a single row of lights. So as your RPMs go up, the lights just sweep across the top. You can set it for dual sets so they meet in the middle, kind of Knight Rider like. I find this was a little more tunability, so you can just pick which colors you want and then the corresponding RPMs. As I mentioned before, I would prefer to have that dialed in a little more, just in case you're like me and you have your RPM limiter set at 7,400, not 75, right? They go up in 500 RPM increments, but it's really easy to manage. And so I knew exactly if I was clipping that first red light, I was getting pretty close to my RPM limit. Works really well. And super, like I said, super customizable. The next page, you set your cylinder number up. So that's for the tach, so it knows what to read. You can reset your trip odometer there. So this is your speedometer calibration. I don't have any of that hooked up, but basically if you hook it up to whatever type of speedometer you're using, and it picks up a signal, you just calibrate it. So right now it's 1-to-1. If you figure out where, say for instance, 30 kilometers an hour is, and you're only running 15 kilometers an hour, well, you change that to a 2-to-1 ratio, and it'll make the connection or the calibration for you. And then down here is all your alarm settings, so you can set your alarms as to what you want. So the only ones you can't set an alarm for your EGT, your AFR, or your boost, but everything else you can set a speedometer alarm, oil temperature, tach, oil pressure, right? And if we say we set that oil pressure at 20, that's where I had like to set it. This red light up here comes on, that's your warning light. You can hear the unit beeping. You might not be able to hear the unit beeping. But if you do that, when you go to your gauges, it glows red and beeps at you. So that's how you know your alarm's going off. So, and then again through here, so you got 4 pages. This would be kind of your main page, speedometer. You got water temperature down here, oil temperature down here, and then your RPMs. That'd be your basic kind of street car. Go through here. This is the way I had mine set up when I was on the track. This was the screen I would use. Tach, oil pressure, water temp, voltage, oil temp, AFR, and then you pick through, you can change any one of these and you can watch whatever you'd like. EGTs, boost, if you're running turbos, anything that's important to you at the time, you can change that, and you can change it on the fly, or you can just leave it alone. Just a different setting. If you want the tach a little bit bigger and you only want to know a couple parameters, right? And again, you can change this to whatever you'd like. If you want to know where your voltage is at all times, you got it big and clear right there. G meter, I never got a chance to use or mess around with this, but same thing. And then it'll record it on a graph, basically what your parameter is that you're wanting to see based on the G value that you're doing. So just a quick little breakdown, a little clearer view of what it looks like. Like I said, it's a super cool unit. I don't know if I'm going to keep it in this car for the time being, just for the sole fact that I can't utilize it to its full capabilities. If it was a road course car or a street driven track car, that's what this would more be suitable for. But like I said, I put one pretty intense race weekend on it, and it held up really well. Easy to read, easy to adjust, super cool. So I'd recommend one for the price. You're not going to get anything comparable in around the same price point, right? You can search around online. They're starting to pop up on your various Chinese shopping apps. And any questions I've had, anytime I've had to deal with Sinco Tech directly with questions, they've been quick response, really easy to help and work with. Can't say enough about it. So that hopefully sheds some light on this neat little unit for you. Anyways, take care.